Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Town of Andover Board of Selectmen special meeting, which is rescheduled our regular meeting. But we're going to start on February 21st. We're starting at 7:02. Before we get started, I would ask everybody to mute themselves when they're not speaking so that we don't have any back feedback. And you're all going to speak right now, so you can leave it on. So we're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republics for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. We're going to move on to item 2, which is public speak. And Elaine, we'll start with you because you're in the upper right corner. I know you might contribute in other areas, but you have anything you'd like to talk to?
Yeah, when it comes to the farmers market, we still don't have a market master. So far, no market this year until we get our act together in a couple of months. We'll stay tuned. And then we're having a chili fest on May 4th. May the 4th be with you. It's going to be at the Andover Community Room, and so we're going to be putting out information for that. And the we is the Andover DTC. It's going to be doing it. We did like 4 of them in a row a while back. And so we're going to do it again because it was a lot of fun. So we're going to be looking for people for chili recipes and chili contests and coming out in their full garb and bringing their friends and family to vote for them.
Absolutely. I'm sure Paula will bring her Mandalorian chili with her. No problem.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Jed Larson.
Nope, just here to listen. In particular, was interested in the affordable housing discussion coming up a little bit.
Okay. We'll go to Jeff Ballard and the Garden Club. I know you're going to talk with us later, but you can go ahead.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're the community garden, not the garden club. Just for a little clarity there. And what we are requesting is $2,400 in early April so that we can put up a fence around the garden. We have been losing over 40% of our produce to the pantry that would be going to the pantry because of critters. So we were asking for permission to put up a fence and $2,400 to fund that fencing materials. And that will be installed by the community garden members.
Okay.
This is very similar to the line item that you gave us last year for the construction of the garden beds.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Anything else?
Yes, we also have a budget request.
We have that on the agenda. We'll actually talk about that at that point in time. So do you have any points you want to bring out to the public, to us, other than the budget request, Jeff?
Just that with the limited funding that we've had, it would be $4,500 from the town of Andover. We have really come a long ways. We've got 6 20 by 12 gardens that are producing for the pantry, as well as a workable, restored, renovated garden shed on premises.
All right, thank you. Diane Gredner.
Okay, hope everybody can hear me.
Absolutely.
Oh, I'm so technologically challenged. Just a couple of things. I noticed on the minutes for the January 17th meeting, they've got me zoomed in as attending and labeled the library board. For the library board, when I do zoom in here, it is not for the library board. I do not represent them in any way. I'm just a general public resident. So whoever does the minutes, if they would kindly not list me as a library board member. Thank you. And the other thing is, I just recently noticed the sign at the Veterans Monument, Veterans Memorial Park. Nice sign. Good job. Whoever is responsible for that, it looks really good. So I appreciate seeing that. I'm sure everybody else does as well. So thank you very much. That's it.
All right, thank you very much. Bill Penn?
Good evening. Just want to say a couple words about the issue with the Burnout Brook. There was a posting on Facebook about the no trespassing there and the like, and I understand there's some discussions and works about possibly securing that property. And I just could say it's, I've biked the whole length of 20.5 miles of the rail trail multiple times, thousands of times probably, and many of my friends and many people feel that that is one of the highlight of the entire length of the rail trail. And I hope we can find a way to come to a mutually agreeable response with the property owner to get that resolved. And I hope if we don't, then the only person who will have access to it is the property owner. But I think it also needs to be considered that property for him is not usable for anything except admiring the history there of the arch and the stream and the river and Burnout Brook there. So either he gets to enjoy it, or he can open up their heart. That group can open up their heart to maybe see a little bit, so the rest of the world can appreciate the beauty and history that is there. And I'll close with that. Thank you for listening.
All right. John Gaskowski. I hope I pronounced that correctly.
Yes, you did fine. I'm sorry, I didn't have my camera on. Hi. For folks I haven't met yet, my name is John Gaskowski. I'm the town's consulting planner, working with Planning and Zoning Commission on sort of some day-to-day stuff, as well as updating the plan of conservation and development, as well as doing what I can to help your town administrator with some grants and moving some projects forward. We were recently successful in getting the steep grant for the upgrades at the rec fields. That project is moving forward, and I hope I haven't talked to Eric after 2 o'clock this afternoon, but hopefully we got the lot SIP grant in for the multi-use path between the town recreational or the town campus and the Hop River Trail.
All right.
Go ahead.
Well, I know, John, you're scheduled in I think item 7A, and we're
Oh,
gonna
okay. We're not there yet. Okay.
yes. So I appreciate, I love hearing from you. Thank you very much. And we're gonna hear more from you. So if you
Great.
hold on, we'll be good. And so last but not least is Joanne Ebert.
I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay. All right, Dennis O'Brien, I know you're on the phone and I know you are listening. I just want to confirm that when we want to move items to executive session, we don't have additions and deletions. So do we do it just when we get to the item? Or
When you
can
get to the item, yes.
Okay. All right, then let's move on. So we're going to do item 3, a board and commission presentation. So Jeff Ballard and friends from the community garden. I would hate to call you a club and be offensive to your senses. So let's sit there. And they did call it a garden club in my agenda, Jeff. So I apologize, but I did state the correct item. So the next time we do the agenda, Eric, we have to make sure that it's a community garden. Right? Okay, so Jeff, I know you already went through it. Is there any other questions from any of the other members to the garden club, the community garden before we move on? And because we will actually vote on this tomorrow, I would imagine would be a better position for it. But does anyone have any questions for the community garden and what their plan is?
What kind of fencing is it going to be, Jeff?
It's gonna be a 6-foot high fence, 2-inch by 3-inch squares, a wire fence. The 4x4 pressure treated posts every 8 foot with 2x4 railing around the top. A 10-foot gate for access for a vehicle at the closest at the end of the garden beds. and a 4-foot wide gate for people to go in and out of.
And just,
This is we are using John Bolton's
Yeah.
fence as a model, which is coming up 316 on the right, the white colonial house that has the
It's at the intersection with Center Street, the upper end of Center Street, the beautiful historic
Mhm.
house there on
Yeah.
the right, so going up the hill. Has a
The
really.
same kind of fencing,
yes,
Similar,
exactly the same as what he's done there.
2x3 box wire.
Yes.
okay, so, Eric, I'm gonna ask you because I know on line item 603-890-55990 is a community garden. There's a $1,500 budget currently in there.
Correct.
Okay, and and Jeff, you're asking for in this budget cycle, not next budget cycle. You're asking for funding.
That's correct. $2,400 to fund the materials for the fence, just like a line item that was done last year.
Well, okay, so Jeff, just so we're all planning correctly, you gotta sit there and be in advance of your budget. And so if you're thinking of projects, you've got to push them out a year because you're really going to push us to find additional funding to fund it in this current year. So we need to be out ahead of this. I'm not saying we can't sit there and look at finding the money. And Eric, I would ask you to sit there and look at finding the money. But I also sit there and I am personally concerned that there's going to be a significant amount of still work done on the landscaping related to the new community center. And are we going to have a problem putting up a fence and then having all of that work done around your area and it causes us a problem? So I'm just saying that I'm bringing that out as an issue, not as a showstopper, but something that we should consider, that there's going to be a lot of movement back there in the next.
Okay, I've already, excuse me, Jeff, I've already measured out and put stakes in of where we're proposing the fence to be. And there's one stake that's inside the anchor fence that's there now.
Okay, so that's one issue. And then I would ask Eric to Eric, if you could you look at what the proposal is and where the stakes are and come back to us next meeting and let us know if you have any issues related to what the request is. And then in the meantime, also sit there and try to determine if there's a possibility for funding for this out of some other account that maybe we can actually do and use. All right?
So I can answer part of that right now.
Well, don't answer
that-
part of it. Don't answer part of it. I would rather you come back to us next meeting and answer all of it, and so that we can just vote on it. I mean, okay, go ahead, answer part of it.
Okay, you're talking about putting a fence and posts up in the middle of a leach field. I don't think that's a very good idea. I would never approve that.
Okay, that's
However, you may.
So that's what we need to know. So let's look at where the requests are for the posts and let's sit there and see what's up. And then we'll try to work a solution that might make the community garden happy. All right. So look at what they're doing and come back to us next month so we can see what's up. All right.
And Eric, probably the best thing to do is to go down there with them. So this doesn't continue. We have an overlap. And those guys you can tell them what you think.
Are the gardens
I've
just
already told them what I think, Scott.
so? Okay, so let's sit there and do this. How much of the current garden do you believe is on the leach field?
Well,
I'm not asking you. I'm asking Eric.
it depends what you define as the leach field. Is it directly over the pipe? Not necessarily. It's a little bit to the side. But would the fence line extend over where the leach field is? Yes. Does that current construction fence have to be moved out? when they install the new leg of the septic system? Yes, so that existing fence line is going to move anyway.
Okay.
The temporary construction fencing.
Okay, so what I would ask you to do is next meeting, at least have your recommendation for the board so that we can sit there and have a vote on this, to sit there and say yes or no as to the funding. So come with your recommendation. Jeff, I already know yours. I've already seen the plans. I looked at the information. Yep, I saw it. Yeah, you guys
Yeah,
good?
I've got a map. I've got the surveyor's map for the proposed senior center, and it's showing the reserve field. And so I want, and one of the requests on our package was that the pipe be moved, and it's my opinion that by putting the 2 feet of post in the ground without cement, with crushed stone, or with a silt barrier, there would be minimal invasion in that leaching field area.
Okay. All right, good to know and understood. And let's sit there and Eric, get the information back to us, sit there and see what account the potential money could come out of it, if it's available, and we'll vote on this next meeting. And Jeff and company, I'm assuming you're not planning on doing this in March.
No, we want to get it done before Memorial Day, before the planting season.
Okay, all right, no problem.
I understand you're wanting us to project, but we didn't know. We planted the garden in the first 2 weeks of June, so we got a late start, and we had no idea that the critter damage was going to be that bad until later in the year.
Okay, understood. All
Hey,
right.
Jeff, I just have a quick question real quick. How, I know the garden is built on top of the leach fields but is there any agreement that there's going to be no stakes or anything driven into the area that they're actually gardening? Because, I mean, I know the fence is there, but there could be stakes and other things driven, and it's a concern of mine. Like, are we going to start driving things into considerably in the leach field? Yes, Jeff, I see your map. Yes. But the leach field goes underneath the garden, and I just don't want to have somebody driving, tomato stakes or iron stakes in there and damaging the leach field. I mean, that's a problem. So, I think we almost kind of need to put agreement together that there should be nothing really driven in the ground in the garden bed area. So,
Excuse me, the garden beds themselves are, from my understanding from the surveyor's map, are well outside the garden beds. The garden beds are raised off the ground by at least a foot, and we do not penetrate any deeper than 8 inches.
okay, I'm just asking the question because I just don't want anybody driving stakes in the ground and damaging the leach
Yeah.
field. That's all.
Eric, there's no part of the garden that is on leach field. That was all filled material. The leach field stops well above where there's gardens are.
So you have a map which
Yeah.
shows the perimeter of the fencing extending at least 10 feet in all directions beyond where the community gardens is. That does overlap.
That now that could a fence pole or two could possibly go into the leach field, and you can't have any poles going in to the actual field.
Okay, so let's get the real information so we understand, because the leach field, there's a reserve, and let's just make sure we understand this right, because I know I'm one of those members that I just want someone to come to us and say the community garden isn't going to damage the leach field and cause any issues if we allow them to do this fence. That's all I'm asking for. And I know that it might be there might be slight differences of opinion, but Eric, I'm asking you to sit there and understand what they're trying to accomplish. Let's help them get there, and let's make sure that we don't do any damage to the leach field. We still may not have the money, which is a different issue, but let's try to help them as much as we possibly can. All right. Jeff, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. The commission, 3B, Commission on Aging, Elaine.
Yeah, the Commission on Aging, we were asking for some alternates. And I know we had a meeting, you had a meeting, and you kind of said it's okay for alternates to be on the committees, your appointed committees. And that was kind of across the board. And Carol Lee looked into the Commission on Aging, and it is not an appointed committee. So we're going on technicalities here that, oh, the reason it exists is because the state said, hey, every town needs to have a Commission on Aging. And it's actually to the purview of the Board of Selectmen to do the appointing and the decision-making on the members of the Commission on Aging.
Okay.
And so currently we have Linda Armstrong, who would like to be an alternate, and we do need alternates frequently. That, you know, not everybody, regular members, can seem to make it to the meeting. So I said, okay, well, I guess I'm asking the Board of Selectmen to go ahead and say it's okay for Linda it's okay for us to have alternates, number one, on the Commission on Aging specifically, and that it's okay for Linda Armstrong that, you know, she's appointed as an alternate.
I'd like to make a motion to appoint Linda Armstrong as an alternate to the Andover Commission on Aging.
I'll second that.
All right. A further discussion from any of the members on Linda Armstrong being named as an alternate to the Commission on Aging? All those in favor? Aye.
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 All right. five-
Okay,
Okay. So we're
So
not, that's
so
that
that's
one.
part one.
Let's go.
and then-
Welcome, son.
Yeah, part two is that if you know, that if you give us as the Commission on Aging the authority to go ahead and appoint our own members, get it out of your hands.
Well,
'Cause,
where
you know,
is this,
have it-
where is this on in the charter at all? Like, just so we're not in violation of anything. So, and that's what we got to look at. And so,
Right.
I mean, let's have Dennis take a quick look at that for next week and next month, and we'll vote on if we can authorize you guys to appoint your own members.
Okay, that would be great. Thank
Right.
you.
All right, and then let's move on to 3C, the Economic Development Committee, and the sign as part of that. So before we get going on the rest of Elaine and her letter that she sent to us, I make a motion that we appoint Elizabeth Cargill and Megan Lally to the EDC.
I'll second.
All right, further discussion on those two appointments? All those in favor? Aye.
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 So 5-0. Okay, Elaine, welcome, son.
Okay, and now just back on the EDC, the reason you guys had to do that is because we only had 2 members at the time that these other 2 members wanted to join. So it's now going to be back in our court to take care of our own member appointments from now on the EDC, as long as we have at least 3 members to vote. The Andover sign has been designed. We took into consideration some comments that Paula had made about the fact that it looked like it was just a snapshot of the bridge that was, and it was, you know, but now he's fully changed it to be what it will be, which is a painting of the bridge, and it's a much simpler and it's a little bit wider, a little bit bigger view of the bridge on the sign than it was on the initial one that was sent out as an example. And we have all the dimensions, and we also have a list of materials that have been sent to us of how it's going to be made and what warranties are on it. And so we're looking to hand that over to Eric and John, our planner, Guzkowski, to go ahead and run with it and get it done.
Okay, let's we'll take that information to our budget meeting tomorrow and sit there and see what we can do on that one. Does
Well,
anyone?
there is, well, the budget's there. The money was put for the 4250 for this one sign. That was already approved last year. It's part of the CIP budget. The second sign, we would like to have done in the next budget, and that is a budget request for an identical sign for next year.
Then Paula, are you good with this design?
So Elaine, I'm just trying to remember what, I don't have the previous one in front of me, so the
Mhm.
text was bigger, and I think we talked about maybe even taking the covered bridge off, but I don't remember where we landed with that.
Well,
So,
yeah, the EDC still felt pretty strongly brand wise that the covered bridge needed to be on there. The original sign that was designed 4 years ago when we started this process actually had a green metal roof that looked just like the covered bridge on top of it. So, I mean, so that's kind of why now a picture of it has been brought into play, because it no longer looks like the covered bridge. And the other sign that had been the larger sign, it even had the rivets and the metal. It looked
Mhm.
like the covered bridge. But so that, we couldn't afford that because that so
Paula, I think we were having the discussion that that area is approximately 2 feet, the painted bridge, and were you going to see it in a traveling car was the question.
Mhm.
right, so what's, I'm sorry, Elaine, I don't have the other one, the original one here in the packet, and I don't have it in front of me. So what were the changes from that to this? Was the
What he had before, it was kind of a smaller picture, actually.
Okay.
It was literally just, it was a picture
Mhm.
that he had on there because it wasn't the final design. And it was kind of like, it's going to be like this. And then when you looked at it, you said, it's just too small. They're really determined. Is that a photograph? I mean, I remember you asking, and it's like, well, yes, actually it was a photograph. So I sent the bridge design that was used for the 175th anniversary over to Art to take a look at and see what he could do with that. And so he basically took that and went ahead and designed that to be the picture.
Okay, yeah, because I think we talked about also taking the picture off because, and I mean, that's just my thoughts and opinion. I don't know how everybody else feels, but when you're trying to look at what the picture is, you miss the welcome to Andover text, but it looks like the welcome to Andover text is bigger. And again, I don't have the other one in front of me, so I think the text is better on this one. It's easier to read, but in the context of looking at it on a piece of paper to what the sign's gonna look at, it's just hard to say, but I think the concern about the covered bridge last time was it was smaller and it was it was conflicting with what you wanted to read compared to the picture, but I mean, I don't want to split hairs here and get in the woods with
Well,
this.
I do. I want to get in the woods, Paula, just quick. Okay? The trees on your graphic need to go. I mean, if you took the trees out, Elaine, I think what you'd end up with and took the whole green behind it, like you have that whole green, it's like your trees, then you would sit there and get a bigger potential for people to understand it's a bridge. I'm just saying, that's my opinion. So, and I got
And-
my little Paula on the tree,
I
tree.
mean, there's no reason why someone can't sit down with the artist and talk about those. I mean, the sign doesn't exist yet. It's
Okay.
just on paper. I guess what we're looking for is the go-ahead to do the sign. And then
If we vote to
down.
give you the go ahead, then the graphic is done without input.
Oh,
So,
that wasn't what we were looking for. We were looking for to go ahead and just do the sign and work with him to get the sign done. You know what I mean? It's like, it's not in stone. We can certainly talk to him about, and I don't know who you want to be the one who sits down and makes the decisions with the artist.
Let me ask this, Elaine.
Yeah.
The vendor you're working with, do they have do they have a graphic designer that can pull out the background? Because I know you're just sending them a file that you have from the
Oh,
175th.
No,
So
this is a one-man show. He is the graphic designer too.
so he's
He
building,
create-
he's
he-
designing and
He
building.
is the designer, yes, he's the creator and he's building it, yes.
So we don't need to give him a file with the background removed. He can remove the background if we're asking him to.
Just gotta ask him to do it, yep. Yeah, like I said, it's like you had mentioned, is that a photograph and it looks too small to even figure out what it was? So I mentioned that to him and sent him the graphic that was much simpler
Mhm.
to him from the 175th. And so he said, oh, okay, I'll use that. And so he used that. And he had the graphic on the 175th had kind of more of a squiggly, it didn't look like a road, it looked like a river. And so he fixed that, he changed that. He responds to anything I tell him and ask him to do. So he could certainly, like, Jeff said, get rid of the trees.
I mean,
And
my take on this is you should just eliminate the bridge photo altogether because you're gonna have 2 seconds of people driving by. I would take the script of welcome just to regular text and just put it welcome to Andover. You're talking a 4-foot high sign. Nobody's ever gonna see that picture. To be honest with you, I've done a lot of signs and graphic design over the years. And you're just taking up space that nobody's ever gonna see, to be honest.
Okay. And
You may
and Jeff-
disagree
and
with me,
Jeff-
but
and Jeff,
that's-
I don't disagree with you, but what I would ask is if the CDC would like to see that bridge, I'm just asking them to come back with an option to us. One option with limited amounts of background noise behind the bridge.
Yep.
And then maybe you have a shot at seeing it. I would agree with you, but that's what I would ask.
I mean, at 50 miles an hour going through, or even like 45, you're not
Come on.
even gonna, you're not gonna see it. You're not gonna see it. I mean,
We just asked
be honest with you, you're not
for the
gonna-
speed limit to be lowered in that area.
I agree, but the issue is it's a 4-foot high sign. It's 4 feet wide. Nobody is ever gonna see that. And to be honest with you, we actually have a large bridge that people see it when they drive by every day. So we really don't need a picture of it because the monument is there. I'd rather have the sign basically saying, welcome to Andover. People are going to see the bridge every day when they drive by. They don't need a picture of it.
Okay. I have a suggestion or something, a comment. What if we ask Elaine and the EDC to ask the vendor to give 2 more proofs? 1, remove the logo or remove the covered bridge, bump up the text.
Mhm.
And then option 2, leave it on there and remove the background and put something behind the bridge so it stands out a little better without. I think the problem is in the bridge photo, there's a lot of green and then the sign is green. So it's just, we need a gray, you need a gray background or the
White.
color of the text that says welcome. That should be the background so the bridge stands out a little better. So what does everybody, if we get 2 more proofs, option 1, option 2, how does everybody feel about
I'm
that?
with you.
Yeah,
Go down to next
I
month.
like that.
But I would sit there and say, if you're going to try to make the bridge pop, it's the trees. Like you can see where he tried to design the trees into the hill. Like I don't mind the hill, I don't mind the road, or it looks like a river, but everything below it that's like a hill, I don't mind. Everything that's on that hill that comes up into the bridge and is behind the bridge, it just washes it out. And Jeff is 100% right. It's a 1 foot by 2 foot image that's taking up the top of the sign that you're going to have trouble seeing. So Elaine, if we don't get the bridge to pop, you're never going to see it. So
Well, that's why I think can we vote to say we're gonna move forward with the sign pending 2 proofs?
sure,
And
he's in the budget. Let's go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd like to suggest that the welcome should be plain text because the brain, you got to figure when somebody drives by, they got 2 seconds to process what they're going to see. And when you do things in script, it takes longer for the human brain to process those letters than it does in plain text. So if it's in
You
plain
want the
text,
You want the
Yeah, the
font?
font. Yep,
Yeah.
the font, because when it says welcome, people are gonna, it's very, I mean, it looks great, but if you're trying to make an impact and trying to get somebody to recognize it right away, it needs to be in plain text.
And the fact that everybody under 25 has no idea what script is.
Correct. Nobody does cursive anymore.
Well, what the vendor's trying to do is use different fonts because he's trying to break up the sign. So that's why.
He's making it pretty.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Who's making the nice sign?
Elaine, you know, and Paul, if you want to make that motion and you want to vote, fine. If Elaine, you heard what we're asking for, so next, because you know, this is not a trivial thing that we're trying to decide here. It's a sign that should have been in place for years, but we're going to put it in place, so it's got to be right because we're not going
Right,
to
and
tear
I'm
it
looking
down
for
and do it
two of
again.
them, so, yeah.
So, Paula, if you want to make a
I-
motion and you want to vote on that, that's fine. So
Yeah, I think Ann's got.
before that, Ann's got something to say.
I was just saying, I really think that it could do probably without the bridge drawing because you get the bridge feel from that sign anyway. It's got the little pitched roof. It's got the green color. It looks like it's a bridge on its own. So I'd say take that, see what the two proofs look like, but I would really go for the one without the bridge picture and just use the shape of the sign and welcome to Andover.
Mhm.
All right, Paula, what do you want to do?
I make a motion to move forward with this welcome to Andover sign with two proofs. The first one, removing the photo above the word welcome and possibly getting a different font for the word welcome. And then the second proof will have the photo above the word welcome with the background changed and the word welcome in a different font.
I'll second that.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Elaine, thank you very much. Appreciate all you do.
Thank,
Item 4, appointments. Eric, do we have any appointments?
None that I know of,
All right, item 5, resignations.
none that I know of that you don't already know about.
Okay. Item 6, town administrators report.
I did not prepare a report. I've had my head down trying to get a grant application out the door. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have.
Okay, how did we do with plowing?
Okay, I mean, we plowed most of the roads. Got a few complaints on one of the dirt roads, but nothing significant.
One of the dirt roads, we only have one in town.
Exactly.
So you got a complaint from the dirt road. All
Yep.
right. Okay. All right, what other issues do you have, Eric? Anything you want to share with the board and the public?
Not at the moment. I mean, it's been a fairly quiet winter before we had this storm. I thought we did a pretty reasonable job of snow removal. The town crew worked pretty hard. We're still within our budget. And our budget for salt allocation, so I don't see any major issues there. Everything else is running moderately smoothly.
All right, anyone have any other questions for Eric? I actually have a question for you. And Scott, this is related to what you and I had spoken about earlier. There's a washout of a culvert on Boston Hill. The state is looking to do work.
Yes, correct.
Aren't we talking about that later?
Oh,
That is on the agenda.
I am sorry, Paul. I thank you very much.
Sorry to jump
I was
in,
gonna
but-
go. I was gonna go at my town administrator to ask him about that because I was interested in that information. Okay. All right. Anything else for Eric, and we can move on. Okay. Old business, item 7. Staff discussion on affordable housing with town planner. So, John, you're now up.
Okay. Sorry for jumping the gun earlier.
No, you
I just-
John.
I just get
We're,
excited when
we're a very
people,
flexible group. You can jump anytime you want.
okay, I just get excited when people talk to me, so it's hard to shut up after that.
right.
So I will jump into a little bit of a presentation, but I'm happy to answer questions that the commission or that the Board of Selectmen may have. But I want to, with respect, and I know we have some members of planning and zoning who I think are probably a little bit more aware of some housing requirements and things like that. I'm going to assume that the Board of Selectmen has a very, very cursory baseline of what affordable housing sort of means as far as our responsibilities from the state and as far as some of the tools that are available to us. And I'll present just a couple of things, and then we can talk through some details if you'd like.
Absolutely.
Okay, so affordable housing is defined formally by the state as housing that does not that is available to residents spending less than 30% of their annual household income on housing. If you're spending more than 30% of your annual household income on housing, whether it's an ownership situation with a mortgage or a rental situation in an apartment, you're considered cost burden. And the state has thresholds of 80%, 60% of the area median income that it labels as moderately affordable, moderate income, low income, and then there's very low income and that sort of thing. So the state has sort of definitional thresholds for what it means when it refers to affordable housing, but it's generally pegged to a percentage of the median income and 30% of that income spent on housing. There are actually very few specific requirements that any municipality has relative to fair or affordable housing. One of those is the Fair Housing Act, which was adopted around 55 years ago, 53 years ago, that basically just mandates, in sort of broad terms, that every unit of government, state, county, town, should affirmatively act to further fair housing goals. What that means, what does it mean if a town is doing this in good faith or is not, has not really been legislated that much, particularly in Connecticut. But there is sort of a fair housing mandate out there in the federal government for 5 decades. More locally, the Connecticut general statutes require a couple of things of municipalities, largely acting through the Planning and Zoning Commission. The first is mandating that a town does a plan of conservation and development every 10 years. And one of my first tasks as joining the town as a consulting planner is to help update this process. The last plan of conservation and development in Andover was adopted in 2015. So we're due to adopt one in 2025, and that's our target. And one of the requirements of that plan of conservation and development is to plan for specifically multifamily and affordable housing, not only in the town, but sort of looking at affordable housing regionally. So exactly what form that takes or how that consideration is given to the mandatory plan of conservation and development is left a little vague, but the POCD must consider these things. In addition, zoning regulations, when the town writes or updates its zoning regulations, the zoning enabling statute, which is section 8-2 of the Connecticut General Statutes, requires that a municipality have due consideration for multifamily housing and affordable housing. And again, what that means, what that looks like, what's the difference between an Andover and a Manchester or a Willimantic, and how does each town's responsibility for including this in their zoning, it's vaguely defined. And so it's sort of town by town, up to the town to figure out, up to each planning and zoning commission to figure out how its regulations will consider and reflect consideration for multifamily and affordable housing. And the last must do relative to affordable housing is a relatively new law passed in 2017, which is section 8-30J of the Connecticut General Statutes, that requires every municipality in the state every 5 years to produce or update an affordable housing plan, which is also sort of vaguely defined, but it basically says every municipality has to come up with a 5-year plan to increase the number of affordable housing developments in that municipality. It doesn't say by how many, it doesn't say by what percentage, it doesn't say what type, apartments, condos, accessory apartments, senior housing. It doesn't say any of those things. It just says come up with a way to produce more. And the town of Andover completed this, I believe, Jed, about 1.5 years ago. So the town has its first affordable housing plan that was adopted, and has a number of recommendations for what can be done to, create an atmosphere of having more affordable housing in town. So those are the must-dos. Then there are sort of the or else, the stick, in which in many cases is the perception of what's called the Affordable Housing Appeals Act, which is Section 8-30G of the statutes, which is a law that's been in effect for some 35 years or so. I think it was 1989, 1990 that it was put in place. That says basically, if a municipality does not have a minimum of 10% of its housing stock designated as affordable, which is defined as deed restricted, income limited, or government assisted housing. If it doesn't have 10% of its stock in one of those categories, it is subject to the Appeals Act, which would allow a developer, should they wish to put a development in town with at least 30% of the new units deeded as affordable, to essentially, to sort of make a complicated matter simple, to essentially do an end around your zoning regulations to allow this development to happen. So the town generally doesn't allow, the town of Andover currently, and many rural towns don't sort of allow multifamily developments as of right, and certainly don't allow higher density multifamily developments at 16 units to the acre, at 20 units to the acre, or something like that. But if a developer came in, and Andover at the time of application did not have 10% of its housing restricted as affordable, as long as the developer could prove that such a development could be built without violating public health code or traffic concerns and things like that, it basically would be approved. As of the last state report, the town of Andover was at about 3.8 or 3.9% affordable. It had basically 50 units restricted as affordable as far as the town counts it, or as far as the state counts it, and that includes 18 units of senior housing, which is over on Riverview, I believe, and 32 households that receive have CHFA, Connecticut Fair Housing, or Connecticut Housing Finance Authority, or USDA mortgage assistance. So currently the town is a little under 4% of its housing stock. So the town is subject to this state mandate. I'm sorry, it's not a mandate. It's a tool for developers. But I would note that this law has been in place for 35 years, and the town has never, to my knowledge, been subject to one of these applications. So whereas this is sort of hanging out there, I think the demographics and the soil conditions and the cost of developing in Andover has essentially, the market has sort of prevented Andover from being a glowing bullseye for developers interested in doing affordable housing. But that tool has been out there for some 3.5 decades.
Just as a question from my end, how many other communities have you heard of or seen developers do the end around?
I am in the middle of a lawsuit surrounding a project in the town of Chester right now, and have been involved in 830G applications in Essex, in Deep River, in boy, and East Windsor. I've been part of or been involved with and sort of on the inside or the outside of several of these. Madison, Clinton. Yeah, there's been a number. But it's in, I would say in Eastern Connecticut, in sort of Southern Tolland County and Windham County, particularly Northeast Connecticut, it doesn't happen as often.
So Andover did have one application for affordable housing about 15 years ago.
Okay.
That fell under 830G. The zoning commission denied the application. It went to court and the town lost quite dramatically, actually. But the good news for the town is the developer couldn't actually build the project, even as an affordable project, economically, and ended up folding his tent and going away. But, you know, so that's our only experience with it as a town so far.
So, you know, it works. However, development is expensive, development is complicated. And so you know, anyway, so that law is out there. But again, and I think as we've seen increasingly, without sewer lines that can really enable significant density, there is just not enough, to use a development term, delta between the market rate units, the cost of developing a market rate unit and what you can sell or rent that as, and the restricted affordable unit that you'd have to basically lose money on the development. It's really tricky. You have to have the right market combination of density and basically a hot real estate market or an attractive real estate destination where you can make enough on the high end to be able to afford to build the moderate or low income end. And it's just a tricky time right now. So even if you wanted to encourage affordable housing, so that the town, so, you know, beyond that, you know, sort of potential stick looming out there, you know, the town created an affordable housing plan, approved an affordable housing plan, and has a number of goals that it wishes to do in terms of you know, putting the town's thumb on the scale to try to encourage more housing. And when it's, you know, affordable housing, you know, restricted affordable housing is kind of the gold standard, and if done successfully would sort of get the potential monkey off your back from the state. But I think there is an increasing recognition that towns like Andover, aside from you know, sort of pure restricted affordable housing, just need a wider variety of housing types to meet its changing demographics and the type of people that it would like to encourage, either moving to town or staying in town. Folks like young families, and we currently have a plan of conservation and development survey out there where people are identifying, you know, empty nesters, seniors, retiree downsizers, and young families as being household types that we'd like to encourage to stay in Andover or come to Andover. But in many cases, there's not those smaller units, the starter homes or the retirement houses that are, you know, relatively small, compact, one level, in many cases accessible for those demographic groups that clearly need them. And so a lot of, I think, the town's efforts in not only in drafting its plan of conservation and development, but looking at its zoning regulations, is going to be looking at how can we sort of put our thumb on the scale or maybe adjust some of these dials to make some of those housing types easier to do, and to work with developers to say, we are interested in this type of housing. Here's what we're doing from a regulatory standpoint, maybe from an incentive standpoint, which is where the Board of Selectmen or Board of Finance might come into play. How do you induce that demand or reduce the regulatory barriers that would make Andover a more attractive destination for this broader variety of housing types, including those that are affordable? And so there's a variety of things to do, making certain things easier in zoning, moving stuff from a special permit category to an as of right category, increasing density of housing developments in some types, allowing for multifamily, possibly for putting in place what we would call inclusionary zoning, which would be basically a mandatory set aside of affordability for any larger development. Say you're doing a 12-unit apartment, you could require via zoning the restriction of 2 of those units or 3 of those units or what have you as affordable, as a way to, incentivize or induce some of these things. And then finally, recognizing that housing is extremely expensive to build. One of the most significant costs is cost of land. And if there are municipally owned, nonprofit owned, mission-based organization owned property that could be available to partner with a developer to make that land extraordinarily cheap or essentially free, to encourage developers to do a larger scale development, a multifamily development, including affordable, maybe seniors, maybe starter homes. That is a way that the town or some nonprofit partner could put their thumb on the scale and reduce housing costs, reduce construction costs or development costs, enough that might make the math work. But the problem what we're dealing with is the math is difficult even in a hot market, and Andover and many of its relatively rural suburban neighbors are just not hot markets right now. So there's that's sort of the conundrum, is how can the town put its thumb on the scale and attract and work with developers to do the types of housing at the density, location, and style that might be suitable and welcome and helpful to the town. So those are the things that planning and zoning and ideally the Board of Selectmen will be thinking about.
So John, what would your recommendation be for the Board of Selectmen? We have to invest money in this affordable housing. So do you have recommendations to help us make a decision on investing this money? I know you hinted at that in the last couple of sentences you said.
Yeah.
We almost have to get developers and talk to them and lead them along to show them that what they could do and what opportunities there could be.
Yeah. So there, I'm not sure, Scott, when you say the town has to spend money on this or invest in this, I don't know if they have to. I think to move the ball down the field, I think the town is sort of faced with a position of needing to have some ought to have some skin in the game somehow. I don't know if that means a cash investment in something like that, but I think one of the principal recommendations I would make is to sort of inventory the town-owned properties for their, and I'm not looking to get rid of town recreational fields or town parks or designated open space, but the town has a number of fairly large properties. There's a transfer station on part of one. There's a senior center on part of one. There are big chunks of land that I think the town could investigate for their development potential. And to, if there is a broader number, 5, 6, 7 acre piece with decent soils and not wetlands and not really steep slopes or rock outcropping. So it's something reasonably developable where you could put in a decent sized septic system. Could look at making a piece of land like that available for a public-private partnership and try to induce a developer or invite proposals for a public-private partnership to have a developer put in some units, that they would, and some of them would be available for affordable or senior, depending on the needs. It's something that has worked relatively recently in Lebanon, where the town, near the Lebanon Green area, the town made some land available, and the developer is working to put in not that many units, maybe 16 units or something like that. And in that way, the incentive for the developer is they're getting, free or very, very cheap land, and a number of units. The incentive for the town is it gets, because it's town land, you get some design control, or concept control within reason. But that's, I think, where I would probably start is kind of take an inventory of what's available, of town land that wouldn't, sort of take away from some other key civic or conservation function.
Right?
John, I'd like to chime in a little bit here and just give you my 2 cents on the proposal. I work in an engineering company, and we have a lot of millennials and a lot of younger people that are starting to work for us. And many of them, when I tell them to live in Andover, they say, what, I could never live out there. I don't want to live out there. There's just nothing out here for me. I mean, most of the younger people want to be downtown where there's bars and restaurants and that type of, setup. And I think Glastonbury, Rocky Hill, recently with the development of the old Ames property, they're putting multi, like high density apartments in there. Same with Newington, they're doing a huge development. I just think we need to find out who our target audience is for this, and who we're going to serve by this. Is it seniors that want to stay in Andover, and do they want to get rid of their house and get rid of the responsibilities of doing a yard and upkeep and be able to stay here with their friends and their their family? Or it is, like you hit on the fact that we don't have a city water, city sewer, we don't have any natural gas, we have no bus service.
Mhm.
I mean, it's hard to try to entice somebody from Manchester, East Hartford, or in a rural, an urban area to come out here where there's actually nothing. And you spoke to the transfer station and the area behind the community center, but I'm trying to think of it as somebody that would try to go down and get a dozen eggs or a gallon of milk. Like, where are they going to go? If they don't have a car. And most millennials and younger people don't have a car, and so does, a lot of seniors don't drive either. So I'm trying to find, I'm trying to wrap my head around this and try to get a balance and try to figure out, what our target is and, like who we're trying to serve with this. Like, I have no problem trying to find affordable housing for people that, want to come to Andover and want to live in Andover, but I don't want to try to put something in just because we have to and try to entice people to come out here and then have them be stuck out in the middle of the woods and not be able to go anywhere. I mean, that's an issue for us.
Sure.
So, I mean, that's kind of my 2 cents on the proposal. And, and the stuff going through the legislature now, I saw there's a proposal going forward now where, even with affordable rentals, they're putting the proposal together now, like when your lease expires, that if you're a landlord, you can't even evict a tenant. So, I mean, the laws right now are very anti landlord or property owner, and that needs to change, number one. And then number two, we need to identify who we're going to actually have for a target audience who we're going to design this affordable housing for. So, I mean, that's it.
Yeah, and I think in response to, I think, your very first point, I think a bit of a market analysis is necessary, and I think we would probably want to meet with some developers, informally, folks that develop, rural or suburban multifamily housing. I had a conversation actually with the developer who's doing the 830G multifamily affordable in Chester. I also work for the town of Columbia, and brought him to Columbia to sort of look around and talk about what kind of opportunities he'd see there and what kind of market he'd see. And I think those kind of conversations are useful. But the thing with, looking at senior housing, not necessarily, not nursing home housing, but senior independent, active adult, sort of single story or little bungalows, of 1,000, 1,200 square feet or something like that. The benefit of building something like that, particularly because you do have, I think, a market locally for downsizers, people who have a 25, 100, 3,000 square foot house that they're kind of rattling around alone in, and would like to downsize but want to stay in town, every time you create a unit, let's call it a retirement unit for someone like that, a larger house opens up for a younger family, or a family that's maybe doesn't want to live in Manchester anymore, or wants a little bit more of a country experience. Because the benefit here is we're not dealing with big numbers. Andover's not a big place, so we're only a couple of dozen new households, or migrating households from downsizing seniors that create housing opportunities for young people. It's that market is not necessarily hard to fill because the numbers just aren't big. But anyway, so I think housing for a targeted group like seniors also has that benefit of creating housing opportunities for others, for younger families or people moving up the housing ladder. But yeah, I think,
and I'll agree with that 100%, John. I think that's, and I think that's the direction we should probably look to in our planning for this. Because I just think that the millennials are just not interested. Like, and there may be a few people younger families that may be interested in coming out here, but for the majority, a lot of them want a walkable, bikeable, bus service, type residence. And I just don't think we have that now, unless the state decides they're going to offer bus service down Route 6 between Willimantic and Manchester.
Yeah.
That's an issue.
Right.
I mean, that's a huge issue.
Yeah. But some of those major, swings, like, putting in a sewer line, water lines, public transit, would be appropriate and necessary if the town wanted to get 20 times its size in terms of population. But, Andover just wants to, largely remain rural residential, grow a little bit, have a little bit more opportunity. And that's why, I think we don't need to think about adding 4,500 new people. We need to talk about at a couple of, 200. And, of those, maybe 40, 50, 60 could be moderate or low income. The numbers aren't enormous.
Yeah, like seniors that want to age in place and then maybe
Precisely.
size a little bit. Yeah, that's I think the target audience we should be going for this plan. So
Okay, and just so I understand the number, to meet the threshold, we're talking in the range of 100 total units.
If you're talking about the number of new affordable units that would put the town over 10%, I think you're talking. I think it's around 90.
Okay, around 90. That makes
Yeah.
sense, because you said we have 28 current units.
You have 51.
51. I thought we had 1,100 total residents.
Housing units in town. How many housing units are there in town?
And then I was just taking 10%.
Yeah. Hold on, I can get you the actual. It's in your affordable housing plan. The town has 1,171 housing units.
Okay, so 117.
Wait a second. No, that's
about right. Well, I don't need exact.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to fluctuate somewhat anyway, but let's say 120, and we currently have 28. If I understood your earlier comments,
you have 51 affordable units in town, right?
we have 51 currently.
Yes.
All right. So we're really about 60 from a number.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so you want to do an inventory of the town properties, of where we could potentially build those potential units, and depending upon how it's structured. I mean, I kind of agree with Jeff Murray on this one, that if we're going to do something like this, we should do something for seniors in place, seniors in our town that want to reduce their overhead and sit there and have a place to go, and would like to stay in Andover if they could, and give them a better location, and a better single floor layout that might suit their needs as they age in place. So what do we have to do that?
So, okay, and I would say, I don't know if I'm forwarding this as a formal proposal for action, but if the, if the Board of Selectmen is so inclined, I would certainly encourage it. I think the task would be, I work with Eric and the assessor to essentially do a GIS data dump of town-owned properties. And we can kind of, do a 30,000 feet look at them. Okay, this one's a town park, that's the school, this is the fire station, here's where we keep the buses, like, and start to sort of narrow some of these things down. If we come up with, 2, 3, 4 potential properties that have excess acreage that could be good, and we turn on wetlands layers and endangered species layers and floodplains and things like that. So we'd sort all those things out. And if we come up with 2, 3, 4 potential properties for additional investigation, then it may be worth investing a little bit of money. And here I'm talking about the range of $2,500 a parcel or so to do a preliminary layout to sort of see what an engineer and a landscape architect could envision could reasonably fit on a property like that. And then I would say we'd probably invite some developers to kind of talk through what would induce them or what would interest them about a town like Andover and what kind of development they would see. All very non-committal, all very preliminary.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, and simultaneously to that, I think there are other things that planning and zoning can continue to work forward on. Is they've had ongoing discussions about things like accessory apartments, and when you talk about affordable, the state defined affordable housing, the biggest chunk of that in Andover is CHFA and USDA mortgages. So these are private people, private citizens who own single family houses that got mortgages. It's their first time home buyers or got sort of lower income mortgage assistance. This costs nothing to the town. And so working with realtors, working with perhaps people in rental housing in Andover or surrounding towns, let them know about these programs. It's one's a state program, one's a federal program, to use those programs to buy property in Andover and become affordable homeowners. And those numbers boost Andover's rating as well. With the town doesn't have to invest anything. That just has to be a public information effort.
All right, I think we should. I was actually thinking about that. Why don't we just get people to buy houses with those? So I agree with that from a marketing perspective. So Paula, let's put that one on our marketing agenda. So moving forward, just so we understand from the Board of Selectmen, I know planning and zoning and Jed and that team run this, but we're going to be as supportive as we can, just to understand that your biggest issue is what you stated before, that someone would try to do an end around the zoning rules to sit there and get something done. But that's highly, I never say never, but it's highly unlikely in the town of Andover.
In 35 years, it's happened once unsuccessfully.
Yeah, and it was before I was involved. So Eric, I'm sure was on probably chairman of the planning and zoning, so he probably had to deal with it directly. So, all right, let's sit there and move forward. And I would agree that you probably want to do the survey of the town properties. Eric probably knows the majority of town properties that are already suitable, so the search should be fairly narrowed. And let's see what we can do to support that with reasonable objectives. And all right, maybe we'll have to do a little bit of marketing too. I think that's probably in our best bet. Does anyone else have any questions for John, specific questions related to anything that we discussed today?
So I have a question, and that is, would the board consider utilizing a piece of town property for an affordable housing development? I mean, obviously, it's got to go to a town meeting because it's a public, it's in the public interest. But the question is the board willing to consider it? Because if you're not willing to consider it, it just doesn't do us a lot of good to put the time and effort into that. So that's really my question for the board. Is this something you're even interested in pursuing?
I'll
Or do
answer.
we wait until the
I'll
state
answer
makes?
for myself and I'll answer for the board. We're not closed-minded group. We're going to listen if there's an opportunity put in front of us that can benefit the town and benefit town residents. So I don't think anyone on this board is going to say no out of hand. Yes, there's work involved up front, and we might say no at the end because of multiple issues, Eric. But until we understand what the opportunity is, we're not just going to say no. I mean, I would doubt it. Anybody here want to say no?
I would say no on the two properties that we have currently, because I don't think they serve what we're looking for housing.
And I'm sure, Jeff, you know those pieces of property intimately. I don't, and I would like to understand what could be done. And if it costs us $2,500 to get a rendering of what potentially can get done, I think I'd be for that.
I mean, just for a case study, if you had a parent that was in one of these units and behind the community center and they needed to go out and get a half a gallon of milk or a dozen of eggs, how are they going to get it if they don't have a car or they can't drive? That's the thing. We need to consider locality to, shopping and be able to get food if they need it, walkable, bikeable type of arrangement. And those two properties that we have currently just don't suit that.
Well, I would sit there and I would come back against you, Jeff, and go, we have 28 units or however many units are down on Riverside. And how are those individuals getting places? They either have cars or they're taking the town transportation.
Or they can walk. I mean, if they wanted to
They
go
can
to,
walk where? Where can those individuals walk?
I mean, they could walk to the store on Route 6 if they really wanted to.
I get it.
But I'm saying it's not going to happen, but for a planning standpoint, why would we want to put a bunch of people in the middle of the woods where they can't access a store,
Because maybe they
transportation?
want to
I
be
don't
there.
think it makes a difference.
It
it's
doesn't
not
make
for
any
us-
sense.
it's
It
not
makes
for
zero
us to-
sense.
It's not for us to decide if they want to be there. It may not ever happen, Jeff, but we should sit there and listen to the opportunity for it. And a developer is going to come in. And so now let's go to the capitalist way. The developer is going to come in and sit there and say, hey, it doesn't make any sense. We can't do it. But at least we've done our due diligence to try to get to the state mandated number. Whether we get there or not is a different issue.
Understood, but I don't want to waste time doing that. If we're going to do it, let's do it and be smart about it instead of just sitting there wasting our time looking at property that I don't think is really feasible.
Okay, well, that is your opinion and I respect that, but I also sit there and go, I look at those properties and I go, hey, if I had a parent that lived in this town and could get a very nice 1,200 or 1,000 square foot house there. I mean, my mom's 90 years old and I took her to the eye doctor this week. She's so happy she's still got 20/40 vision. She's ready to get back in the car and go. So it's all different stuff, Jeff. Different strokes for different folks. Not everybody's going to be taking a bus. And let me tell you, if I'm 90 years old and I can still drive, I will be putting the pedal to the metal and moving on out. So
Understood, but we need to look at those people that can't do that. That's as well. So
yeah, I'm with you.
Sure. And I
So,
think,
but I don't think Jeff will say no to the two properties, but then the issue is from the rest of us, I still believe that even those two properties should be evaluated and we should evaluate any of the other properties that are out there.
I think there's just more suitable properties in the town of Andover that would be more suitable to this type of housing. That's all.
Okay, and I don't disagree with you that there's some privately owned pieces of property that would be more suitable. And but we don't have control over those to sit there and offer them to a developer. So then I'd go back to you, John, and go, are there ways that we can incentivize those landowners that might have properties in town? And what would we do for that if they might be interested in selling their properties or working with a developer to build those units?
Well, so yeah, no, I mean, if you determined that, for various reasons, and location isn't important, that the town properties are not suitable, then, the next question is, okay, so what properties are suitable? And you look at, maybe something near whatever shopping, near town hall, the schools, the library, the senior center, you sort of do a geographic study. And if you found a privately owned piece of land, there's a variety of things you could do. I mean, the town could seek to acquire it, just outright buy it, but, bond your funds or set aside sinking funds to do that. There could be a regulatory tool if the private entity was sort of development motivated. We could create some sort of incentive housing overlay where you would have certain density, and actually Columbia is looking at doing just precisely this right now, doing some kind of very attractive zoning incentive that would create a no arbitrary density cap kind of creative solution that would really get a developer interested. That's one tool. So either the town look to acquire it or really create some sort of density development incentive. There are other ways to skin this, but as you go further down that road, you're a little bit more market dependent if the town sort of doesn't control the cost of the land.
Okay. Understood. All right. Jeff said he would be opposed to those two properties. Anybody be opposed to Eric doing some legwork on trying to move this forward on even those two properties and any other town properties?
Not opposed to. I think we should investigate it and see if it's possible.
Okay.
And in fairness, I'm happy to help Eric. He doesn't have to do the legwork by himself.
No problem. Okay. Scott, you good?
I'm good with that. Yeah, I feel the same way Ann does.
Paula, you good with that? Yes? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Even without Paula's verbal thing, her shaking of her head was fine. We'll take it. All right.
Does anybody have issues with the renderings and the concept scheme that are in the town of Andover's affordable housing plan? Because basically Bill Warner's done that on, I think, 4 different properties and showed you conceptually, on those properties, what it would look like if you did do a housing development and how it would look.
All right. Can you bring those 4 pages to our next meeting?
Yeah. It's in the affordable housing plan, right, Eric?
Sure.
Yeah, you can pull out the PDF pages and bring them to our next meeting, and we'll have moved this item from, we'll continue to keep it in old business.
Eric,
Okay.
I'll send you those pages in the next couple minutes.
All right, John.
Thank you.
Any other questions for John? John, thank you very much for taking your time, be with us, and sorry we took so much of it.
No, it's great to be with you guys.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you, John.
John.
All right, item 7B, community center construction update. Attorney O'Brien, I know that we're interested in moving that and another item to executive session.
Yes, I agree that the FOI Act authorizes executive session for both those items, 7B and 7E. So I'm going to give you the citation from the statutes for that, just so it can go into the record. It's General Statute Section 1-200, parens 6, parens capital B, and parens 9, parens capital C. Okay, and the upshot of all that is that the agency's consideration of action to enforce or implement legal relief or a legal right may be subject to, is subject to discussion in executive session, provided, of course, that you vote to go into executive session. So I would recommend, actually, that for item B, which from what I understand, there's going to be some discussion based on emails I received regarding some issues with the construction contract, with the implementation of the construction contract under item 7B. And of course, we're all familiar with the 7E item regarding a potential lot line agreement. So those two items to me are eligible for treatment under the FOI executive session. And that's up to you as to whether or not you want to do that, vote to go into executive session and invite others into the session who you think may be necessary or helpful, such as the town administrator and possibly even myself.
All right.
That's it.
I'll make a motion that we move items 7B and 7E to executive session.
Second that.
And wait, I made a mistake because I was laughing. And invite town administrator Eric Anderson and town attorney Dennis O'Brien.
Can I
I'll
make a
second that.
suggestion that you push that to the end of the meeting?
Yes,
Not
yes.
go into executive session now and then have to come back and
Right.
restart.
No, that's how I was perceiving that we would work this. It would be after public speak. Okay. Who seconded that? I'm sorry. Did
I
anyone?
did.
Scott did. All right. Any discussion on these items? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. All those opposed? Jeff, are you going to vote or no?
I'm in agreement.
Okay. So 5-0. Okay. Let's go to item 7C, discussion of blight and level of involvement. Eric?
So I did send the board separately from the packet a copy of the updated blight/zoning violations status. So you should have had that to review prior to the meeting. Sorry, I didn't get it from Jim early enough to give it to you earlier. I think Dennis can talk about where we are with probably our leading contender in the blight issue, which is the Barnett issue that has gone through the the citation and citation hearing process. And the property does or will in the next day or so have a lien attached to it for $5,500 for failing to meet the blight statutes. And so that's where we're at with that right now. If you have any other questions regarding any of the other properties, I will answer what I can.
Oh, well, congratulations to you and Dennis on getting the citation system set up and working. I think that's a valuable move for the town. We've made progress. So thank you very much on that part. So
I want to tell you that I want to thank Mark Risley, who is our citations hearing officer. It's very difficult in some smaller towns, especially, to get anyone to serve in that position. It's a semi-judicial position, and I did train him, and he did a wonderful job hearing his first case on February 13th, first case ever in this town. I'd like to make some suggestions in the future to expand the scope of the hearings procedure into other areas other than blight. And I'm making a survey of all of our ordinances to see if fines should be attached to them, and we have zoning as well, and move into that area and use that to help induce people to follow the rules and regulations of the town. And if not, they'll be fine. But I think after a while, when the town is taking these violations seriously and has a process for dealing with them, I think that we're going to get more compliance. So I'm really pleased with the outcome of that one case that went on for quite a while, and also the work of Jim Halsey, our blight enforcement officer, who also is our zoning enforcement officer, who did such a nice job with Attorney Branch in the recent case we regarding the community center in the zoning area. So I'm very pleased with that result, and I'm looking forward to more cases, and well, hopefully at some point none, where people are all following the rules. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Eric related to blight issues that they're seeing out there? Okay. All right, thank you very much. Let's move on to 7D, Hendy Road, Buddhist Road impacts. Eric, anything?
So that is on the spreadsheet. The zoning agent sent them a letter stating that they needed to come into compliance with the town's zoning regulations. Because right now, even though what they're doing would be permittable, they still haven't applied for the permits for the occupations that they have. So that's really the first step, bring them into zoning compliance. And then as part of that, deal with the parking situation, preferably on site.
What do we have for the cost of those permits?
I don't know.
Okay, so next meeting, can you come back and just, we should be setting a reasonable fee for administrative services on any of those types of permits, and then we should bring Dennis into, if they fail to get those permits that we value correctly, then I would assume, Dennis, that we would be able to sit there and bring this to the compliance officer for hearing.
Yeah, the process is relatively complicated. It's authorized by state law, but it keeps you from having to go to court on every one of these cases. And I mean, they can be brought to court by the violator, but most of these cases, in my experience, when I was set up a system in Mansfield, it worked quite well. Most of these cases are not brought to court. I think I only had one out of maybe 30 or 40 cases that we had over in Mansfield during my tenure there. So it's a great way to enforce the zoning regs and the town ordinances that provide for a fine. But we need to make some changes in the town ordinances, as I said before, and we also need to bring zoning into it. And that is really important. And that I've already drafted an ordinance for that, awaiting our next special town meeting, at which I'll try to make other presentations, additional presentations on, first to the Board of Selectmen on ordinances I think should carry a fine and should be enforceable under this system. And one of them, Mr. First Selectman, is the one you mentioned, and that would be people who do not get permits. That people who don't get permits when they're supposed to get permits for almost anything can be fined and brought into this system. And I think that's a great idea, because there is a lot of violation in that regard, as far as I know. Thank you.
Well, the question that I would ask you first, Dennis, is I would assume, are the board that would set up permit fees or approve permit fees.
Actually, it to some extent it would be the board, but it would also, some of these things would have to go to, you would start the process with an approval of a proposal, say from me, for example, and then it would have to go to town meeting. So we're going to need at some point a special town meeting. I remember we had one a half ago. We put a whole bunch of very good provisions on the agenda for a special town meeting. I'll remember it well. We had a large turnout. We passed a lot of really good legislation, and I think we're going to have to do that again pretty soon. It's around time. It's about time to do that, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. Eric, you were going to say?
I was going to say the ordinances currently give the power to modify the fee structure for, zoning applications to the Board of Selectmen. So you could approve a different, fee schedule for zoning applications if you so desire.
Okay, Jed, I believe is still on there. Well, I would like to review that, and I would like to make sure that we're, obviously certain types of events, create other problems or certain different problems, and there's administrative costs to having permits be applied for. So I think we should sit there and look at our fee structure for those types of items at a future meeting. But that is something I'd like to look at down the road. Is there any other questions?
I'll be-
The Buddhist Road property, Buddhist
I mean,
property?
I'll be looking at all of that myself, and I'll report back to you as soon as I can.
All right, thank you.
I noticed that no one has been at that property since it snowed. So I don't know if the monks moved out or.
All right.
It's too
But
cold, they froze to death. It's very sad.
Well, I'm not worried about the residents. What I'm worried about is the excessive gathering that is requiring of a permit.
And if we talk about this and put it on our agenda again, we probably should put it on, that it's on Hutchinson Road.
Correct. I would think it's off of Hendy, but it is Hutchinson's that is the problem and causes the problem with the traffic. All right, a 7F stiff account update, Eric.
No real update. We still have the vast majority of our money in the stiff account. We're still making 15,000 bucks a month in interest fees from the stiff account. So happy joy there.
Yes.
So what was it last month?
I can't give you the exact figure off the top of my head. I don't have it.
1 second. I'm not sure if it's in the package.
I didn't see it.
But I know there was $250,000 additional funding moved there. I don't know if they're putting it in the top. I don't have a number. They don't have a monthly number. So there's 7 months, $64,946.43. So I'm sure, you know, as more money gets into that account, it's there. The last month is a larger number. So, but if you divide that over the 7 months you have, you almost have $9,500.
Nine, yeah.
On that number.
Yeah. Just wondering
Remember,
for
we
last.
built it up slowly
Yeah.
because we have a problem with our M&T account. There's only so much we can transfer in one shot.
Correct.
So it took a while to get up to having the majority of our money in that account.
And listen, that's a very positive thing for the community that we
It is.
find.
It's excellent.
And so good job by Eric and the treasurer.
Right. Very good.
Hey, Jeff, before we move on, is there any update on the Skinner Hill Road parking lot? Because I saw it in our packet, but I don't see it on the agenda.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, Jeff. I read that. I think we need to move that to the next month's meeting.
All right, do we have an update on that as far as the construction fees for the parking lot or anything with that? from Justin?
So all I can tell you with that is when you moved the Board of Selectmen meeting, you picked a date with which conflicted with several of the people at Joshua's Trust that would have been here. So they could not make tonight's meeting. So I told them we'd have to do it at next month's meeting.
And that's fine. So,
Okay, I just
you know,
wanted to
and
make sure we were taking care of it. That's all.
Yeah, and
Yep.
I would also sit there and go, you have the information in our packet on the civil engineer, the Jacobson. I don't see it on the agenda.
That's item A under new business state
Oh.
local bridge program.
Got it. I didn't see Jacobson all the way out to the right. My bad. Okay, so we're done with stiff account. We're gonna move on to item 8. We're gonna go to item 8A, state and local bridge program approval, discussion of contract expansion to hire Nathan Jacobson.
Okay, so I'll give you this real quick. So there's kind of 3 things at play here. The first is the town's purchasing policy. The second is the contract we signed with Nathan Jacobson to provide engineering services. And the third is the actual cost for the design for the engineering services. And so I went to the Board of Finance, last meeting, because I think that I want agreement by both boards if we're going to proceed with this without going to RFP. So basically, when we hired Nathan Jacobson as our civil engineering firm, we hired them primarily for their expertise in the federal local bridge project, or the state local bridge project, because they have a really good track record of getting designs through, helping us to get state funding, and facilitating the actual construction of projects. The problem came in is that we made our original contract with Nathan Jacobson in a period where the cost of bridge projects has been ballooning. In fact, we had a presentation by the state DOT not too long ago at one of the CROG policy board meetings, and also at the transportation board meeting, where they've noted that the average cost for a major culvert replacement has gone up by a factor of 4 in the last 6 or 7 years, which is crazy. What's driving that in large part is design requirements and permitting requirements, are a lot more significant than they were even, 8 to 10 years ago, especially stuff that requires Army Corps of Engineer permits. And what they do is they typecast you into much more expensive structures than what would have done before. I mean, what's there now is a couple of squash metal pipes that got stuck in there, filled with earth, and put a road over it. And you just can't do that today. So what I would like to do is just authorize Nathan Jacobson to do the design work for this bridge or culvert, because that's what we hired them for, instead of going out to RFP. But knowing that it's over the cost threshold that we originally signed. So I originally had up to a $75,000 threshold for engineering design services for a project before I had to go back out to RFP. And this is about 128. But if you look at the state guidelines, it's still $60,000 or $70,000 less than what the state says we could charge for engineering fees on a culvert of that size and complexity. So I think the proposal they gave us is actually pretty fair. And I really don't want to go through the RFP process for this, because I think Nathan Jacobson can actually deliver and get us a design, and get us to build in a year or so, which is my objection, and get us through permitting. So that's what I would like to propose. And that's what I would like to discuss here. So, and this does not violate our purchasing policy, and the Board of Finance has already motioned to approve it. So now I'm coming to you and say, is this something the Board of Selectmen will consider? That's it.
So your issue is that the RFP process will take you too much time and energy to, and I don't say, maybe I've said that wrong, Eric, but you're trying to avoid the whole process of the RFP.
I am and I'm not. And by that, I mean, we spent a lot of time interviewing engineering firms before picking Nathan Jacobson. And we picked Nathan Jacobson specifically. I mean, they had other traits, but in large part, we picked them because of their expertise with navigating the state local bridge program. What we didn't, and we had tried to set a high enough threshold that most of the projects, the engineering for most of the projects would automatically fit under the threshold, and we could just hire Nathan Jacobson. But we did it in a period where the costs were going up dramatically, in large part because of regulation. So, you know, the threshold we established just isn't realistic in 2024. It was realistic, you know, in 2020, but it's not today.
Okay, and so the state is saying that a potential design for a culvert of our size or this size is $160,000?
So they said it was, I think if you go back to the state approval, oh, I don't have the cost basis in that shit. Excuse my language.
Put it in the tip jar. There, come on, man.
Totally.
Jeez,
I'll
please,
totally put money in the tip
please.
jar for that.
That is
I'll
killing,
donate it to the seniors.
killing me.
But yeah, when we looked at the budget we submitted to the state for the local bridge program, which they accepted and agreed to fund half the cost, the design cost built into that based on their guidelines were somewhere around $180,000. You know, per the DOT guidelines. But what Nathan Jacobson will actually charge us is
27.
127. Well, 128.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions specifically to Eric related to this? Jeff?
I'm good.
All right. If it makes your life easier, Eric, then I'm okay. So I'll make a motion that we allow the town administrator to expand the contract to hire Jacobson on which culvert, Eric?
This is the one on Lake Road by Basola.
For the Lake Road culvert.
I'll second.
All right, further discussion, anybody? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. 5-0. All right, let's go to 8B, the AHM Youth Services.
Okay, so I threw in the packet, it is on page 28, the proposed budget for AHM Youth Services. And I also invited all the Board of Selectmen members and Board of Finance members to attend their budget presentation. So this is the summary of what AHM is proposing. AHM, as most of you know, is the Youth Services Bureau for the town of Andover. It's a tri-town board, but Columbia is part of it also. And that is what they are proposing. As some of you may or may not know, the way the organization is structured is the Board of Selectmen has one vote in approving the overall AHM budget, and the Board of Finance has one vote. So ordinarily I cast the Board of Selectmen vote, but only after you as a board authorize me to cast a yay or nay vote. And then the Board of Finance decides who they're gonna have cast their vote.
So we're talking about a $5,000 increase in our overall expenditure for them?
Correct.
And do they have, did they provide you with any usage data? How many of our residents utilize services?
Not directly as part of this. They've supplied that in their annual report, but we don't have that yet.
Well, it was a $5,000 increase. It's over a 5% increase for the community, for the town, but
Correct.
I know they provide a significant level of services, especially to to our residents and to other residents in the school. Were there any issues Eric raised at the budget presentation that you want to come back to us and tell us about?
No, I mean, we had a pretty good conversation about it and, you know, what programming they were doing. I mean, I think a large part what they're kind of focusing on is just overall youth mental health and trying to staff up that. They did get a grant from Hartford Foundation for Public Giving to develop kind of basically a business model for how they could provide that service without really spending a lot of money. So they've been working on instituting that. And I would also note that, you know, even though Andover is 16% or so of the population, you know, of a $1.82 million budget, Andover only spends about 100,000. The rest of the money that they budget comes from, you know, state sources, federal sources, or fundraising sources. So they derive a lot of their money from outside events. You know, so to me, it seems like we're getting a reasonably good deal, but youth services is not really my strong suit, you know, in general.
Did they talk about why their health insurance went down so substantially?
I think part of that was they have some real staffing issues right now, and they've been using contractors in place of employees in some cases because they can't hire.
Okay.
So I know that was part of the factor. I don't see anything else that would drive their healthcare costs down because they are on the same health consortium that we are on.
Okay, so that means they have less participants. Okay, because our healthcare went up, what, 16%?
Correct.
Wow. That math is tough for me to work out. Okay. Anybody else have any specific questions related to the budget for AHM? Okay, does the board want to approve this tonight or tomorrow in our budget meeting? Or vote on it tonight or tomorrow?
Well, we probably won't have more information tomorrow, right?
No.
So then I say either we vote on it tonight or we ask for more information and vote on it another night.
Well, there's no, I mean, to
Nothing.
me, there's no additional information. It's a program that's established. I would assume if Eric came to us and said there was significant issues by the board and the discussion group that met over this, and if he's not, then basically, Eric, everybody approved of the overall budget proposal for AHM. There was no specific, was there any organization and Hebron or Marlboro or Columbia that put up one of the other entities that was in disagreement with one or more of the parts of this budget?
No, I mean, the biggest issue was Marlboro. The town administrator just had a lot of questions about the organization because he's a new town administrator and he hadn't really interacted with AHM. So there were a lot of questions about process and procedure, you know, that we all talked through, you know, and why the vote was the way the vote was and whose authority it was to actually approve these. So, but there weren't, nobody was really having an issue with any of the specifics of the cost structure of the agreement.
Okay. And so you guys, the group that was there, listened to the presentation from AHM and is now coming back to the respective boards to get approval. And you're going to go back and say yes or no.
Correct.
All right. I vote to authorize the 2024-2025 AHM Youth Services budgeted amount for the town of Andover to be $102,528.
I'll second.
All right, further discussion on the AHM program or the AHM budget for the 2024-2025? Anyone? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. 8C, public meeting on March 12th, 7 PM, Route 16, related to the Route 16 connectivity project.
So what I would like to do is hold a public meeting on that date in the community room to solicit further feedback regarding that project. Now, we have already submitted the grant. So, you know, because we were under a deadline and there's no way we're having a big public meeting before that. So we talked to the homeowners directly, with one exception that we tried to get a hold of multiple times and were never able to make contact with them. So we've taken into consideration the best we can the input from all the homeowners along that project. But we also want to broaden it out to the community, because I've had a bunch of people ask me questions, you know, and we want to have a public meeting to discuss and have the engineer present the preliminary, you know, preliminary plan, and then get further feedback before we go into survey and design. Now, because we have more money available that we have to spend by the end of the year, I am trying the end of the fiscal year. I am trying to expedite this and get this as far through the design process as I can, but I want to get as much public input as I can before I do that. So that was our goal in that. And public has a right to know what it is, you know, the town's trying to do. So that's that.
All right, I'm just gonna keep going. I'll make a motion to schedule a public meeting to discuss the Route 16 connectivity project on March 12th, 7 PM in the Andover Community Center.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All those in favor? Oh,
Correction, Route 316. You said Route 16.
my bad, Route 316 connectivity grant, connectivity project. So please correct that when you hear this. The phantom person that's going to write this up, please correct that. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. 8D, a date for discussion to meet with the fire chief and the fire and the Andover Volunteer Fire Department staff at the firehouse.
So, little correction to how that's worded on the agenda here. So Eric and I were talking, Chief Mike was asking to meet with the board. We've never really sat down with them, and he wants it to be the chief and not the entire volunteer staff. It's just the officers. So just to kind of meet and greet, we never really kind of sat down with them as a board, get to know them, they get to know us, and he just wants to sit and have a cup of coffee for an hour and just chit chat. So the idea was get thrown out there on a Sunday at the firehouse. I think originally they were talking about Sunday morning. I asked if the afternoon would work, just because I'm being a little selfish because I go to church Sunday morning. So if anybody's in the same boat, Ann's in the same boat. So Chief Mike said, you know, they were available Sunday afternoon as well. So just looking for probably 2 dates after budget season. I said to him, you know, right now we're in the mix of meetings, and he said that was fine. So in March at some point, looking to give him a couple of dates to see what works with him and his officers.
Let's look at the calendar.
So I'm gonna say the 31st is probably out for most people that are celebrating Easter that day.
Yeah, all those days are tough. Do the 10th. Can we do the 10th?
I'm available the 10th. Can we try and give them two dates with a majority of us?
All right. The 17th is St. Patrick's Day. It's not going to work.
That is
The 17th. I'm assuming for the fire department and guys, it wouldn't work. The following day is Palm Sunday. The following Sunday, the 24th, is Palm Sunday. The next day is the 31st. That's Easter.
so Palm Sunday. I don't unless people are doing dinners and stuff. I mean, if people are doing Palm Sunday stuff, it's probably in the morning, but I don't know if anybody's got like a dinner, but just throwing that out there. So we're saying March 10th is a yes, correct?
24th is a maybe for me.
Okay.
Not sure about that one right now.
Okay. What about
St. Patrick's Day in the afternoon, you think would be an issue? I mean, I'm just asking. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't.
well, maybe people are celebrating a little early, later in the day. We don't know. I don't know. I'm
I
trying
mean,
to
I would think it would be more of an issue on Monday because everybody'd be hungover.
well, listen, we're trying to be diplomatic here, Eric. That's another tip in the jar there for senior lunch, okay?
Ah, killing me here.
What about a date in April? Why don't we say the 10th of March for sure? And then something in
The
April.
14th of April.
14th.
Yeah.
Yep, okay, the 14th.
The 10th and the 14th work.
What time are we thinking?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock. Okay.
How about 1:30?
1:30 maybe, yeah.
1:37.
Yeah. That's different, Scott. 1:30. You got a pickleball tournament you're at?
What's wrong with the 7th?
What's wrong with 1:37? Okay. All right, let's move on.
Okay, so I'm gonna tell them March 10th and the 14th as two options at 1:30. Jeff Murray, do you have any thoughts on any of this?
I'll just try to make whatever work. I don't really plan that far ahead, to be honest.
I'm with you.
All
Okay.
right, thank you.
All right, thank you, Paula. So we're gonna move on to 8E. And Eric, just as a point, there was information in here in the packet related to from the fire commission, I believe, related to their abatements.
Well, that's not really actually coming from the fire chiefs. That's coming from the fire company. And that's part of what I think they would like to discuss with you. They would like the board's support so that the next time we go to a town meeting, that is one of the ordinances that is considered. And if you look at it, they stated up front that they would make it effective the 25-26 budget year. So it wouldn't affect, because they know we're probably not going to get it through the decision-making process early enough for it to be instituted in this year, nor do they have any real desire.
Okay, so that's why that information was in there. Okay, so we'll have that discussion when we sit down.
However, I do have one question for the board, and this is something that didn't come from the fire chief. That did come from the Board of Fire Commissioners. And that is, we have a chief that's been a volunteer in the town of Andover for many, many years, like 26 or 27. But he does not live in Andover. So even though he's the chief, he doesn't get a tax break. And the Board of Fire Commissioners asked me whether I would pursue with the town of Bolton, or not Bolton, Columbia, where he lives, whether we could come up with some kind of arrangement so he gets that equivalent tax break in Columbia. But I don't think Columbia is just going to blanketly give him, a rebate. We would have to reimburse Columbia if we're going to do that. So that question came from the Fire Commission, not from Ron Mike. I think Ron Mike doesn't necessarily think he needs it or wants it, but the Fire Commission feels it's an issue of fairness. And they also think that's potentially it's an issue of ability to recruit firemen from other towns.
Okay, let's sit there and have that discussion when we're there with them, and let's figure out a way that we might be able to work it out. But I read their requests, so let's deal with it later at that meeting. 8E, local traffic authority approval for the a detour and closure of Route 603 Boston Hill Road.
Correct. So basically, the DOT did a culvert inspection because I had a complaint from somebody that there was a little bit of a cave-in. They went out, looked at it, and decided that it needed emergency replacement. And for some reason, they don't seem to care too much about, state or federal regulations. They just want to do it. However, they can't do it without a detour. And only you, as a Board of Selectmen, can approve a detour because any detour has to use town roads. So that's why it comes to you as the local traffic authority to approve it. And the DOT said they would probably post within a day or two of the approval by the local traffic authority, with the intention of doing the work in about 2 weeks, after they get approval.
How big of a culvert is it?
I think they're twin 48-inch culverts.
Twin 48-inch culverts.
Correct.
Can you find out how much money it's going to cost them?
A lot less because there's no bureaucracy, Jeff.
I know, I get it. They're just doing it. I love it.
Percy Cook's gonna pull up with his excavator and take care of it.
I mean, I'm just interested in what's the state gonna what it's gonna cost.
Not a lot. I stopped down and looked at it. Pretty interesting. They're doing.
Okay. So what you're saying, Eric, is we have to go through all the regulation and the bureaucracy to get our culverts done, but the state doesn't appear to be going through the same level of bureaucracy.
Yeah. So does that mean that
I want Eric to answer that.
And that seems like a pretty fair statement. Yep.
Okay. All right.
Long as it's a safety issue? Then
I mean,
Lake
if we ever
Road
had
is
a
a
major
state.
culvert wash out, like if Stattle Brook blew out completely and all washed down into the lake, I bet we could replace that on an emergency basis and just get away with doing it. But short of that, I have no desire to go make big rocks and little, into little rocks.
So,
my
I have no problem with, so I'll make a motion that we approve a detour for the closure of Route 603 Boston Hill Road.
I'll second
I'm sorry. Let me go backwards. I make a motion that we authorize a detour to allow the state of Connecticut to close and repair Route 603 Boston Hill Road.
Second.
Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, we're gonna move on to item 9, approval of.
Jeff, just can we add item 8F, approval of Board of Selectmen member to CIP?
We can't add an item, Jeff.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay.
We're gonna do that at the next.
Because it
meeting.
is a special meeting. I just
Yeah,
wanted,
because it's a special meeting.
understood.
Okay, so let's move to item 9, approval of minute meetings for, and we'll do them all. Well, can we do them all? Were we all at them all? Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the minute meetings for the January 17th, 2024 special meeting, the January 22nd, 2024 special budget meeting, and the January 29th, 2024 special budget meeting.
A second.
All right, further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 5-0. Let's move on to the treasurer's report. Eric, anything specific related to the treasurer's report?
No, not really. I mean, the treasurer's report and the check register are in there. The treasurer was back in a couple days ago. She had to come up from Florida for a couple of days. So she spent about a half a day working on site. The Tuesday, I think Tuesday. We got a bunch of questions, or I got a bunch of questions answered. And we had some further discussion with the auditor. The auditor is hoping by Friday to issue the draft audit report and have it in our hands. He was just doing a final review before he released that to us. So if I get it Friday, you will get it Friday, and you and the Board of Finance will have that to review and ask questions of.
Okay. Anybody have any specific questions on any of the line items? Okay. Let's move on to item 11, the tax collector's report. And before we get to the refunds, I want to talk about the reports that are provided, Eric.
Okay.
So, the report that starts on page 66, can you ask the tax collector to look at the section that's called uncollected taxes by year? And they don't appear accurate to me. And I say that because I can't believe 2022 there's still $8 million uncollected for 2022. And when I look down at the next report, which is this nice tax 5 dashboard, it shows me a total due of 2.3 million. So I'm thinking that the information that's provided here has been static and has not been changed on page 66. So if you can, just have a look at that.
Yeah, that does not look like it's up to date. Yep.
Yeah. So take a look at that. Other than that, it was a big collection month. I'm assuming because there's no section off to the right that the tax collector is having a better time balancing her numbers out.
The tax collector has managed to successfully balance the books on a regular basis.
I love it. Good job. All right. So we have another set of tax payments due and all unpaid taxes from the last. Let's see, we're on payment 2, right? We're on payment 2. No, we were on payment 3, and we have one more to go. So 2.5 million, 2.3 million looks right, not 8.4. Right. So anyway, anybody else have any other questions on the tax collector's report? Okay, tax refunds, there are 4 of them. Refund of excess payments to the, okay, so I won't make the motion on this one. I hate this one.
All right, if I can get to the right page, hang on.
68.
My internet is not stable, so it's not bringing up the right page. Scott or somebody else has to do it. It's not bringing up my packet right.
Come on, Jeff, you can do it. It's good for you.
I'll make a motion that we approve tax refunds for excess payments to 4 taxpayers in the amount of $697.83.
Second that.
Second it. Great. And
Okay, Ann seconded it. All those in favor? Aye. Okay. All right. Departmental reports that are out there. Anybody have any questions related to any of the reports that were in our package? I'll sit there. I'll just make a general comment. So there were 15 total building permits issued in the month. Are we still using the online system, Eric, and are we having any problems?
No, the online system's running pretty smoothly.
Okay. All right, and then we had Department of Public Works report that Jay issued in his log. Any issues with Public Works that we need to be made aware of, Eric?
So the only thing I think we should have a discussion, because I know we were going to have a discussion tomorrow with Jay Tuttle anyway, because you had asked him to come back and provide you some more details in terms of budgeting. We should have a discussion about the chip seal contractor. Basically, we got bids on the state bid list last year. Both vendors were essentially identical cost. We went with Gorman because Gorman, in truth, Jay thinks Gorman does a better job overall than Comer. I'm not sure I agree, but they were not able to do the work this year. So we're out of that construction season. We're into the new construction season. Comer has the state bid contract this year, but their costs are up. So I would prefer to use Comer because I think Gorman's kind of, what's the word? Been underperforming the last 2 years in a row, and I really don't want to reward that behavior. But Jay and I disagree on that. And because Gorman has agreed to honor last year's prices, if we do it this year, it will be about $30,000 cheaper. So it does offer us a significant savings. I personally feel we've had enough issues with them that I don't want to do that, but $30,000 is $30,000. So it's going to be a question of, do we roll the dice on whether Gorman can actually perform, or not. So I think that will be tomorrow's discussion, or part of tomorrow's discussion when we get to that portion of budgeting.
Okay. Just so everyone's aware, the Andover Senior Transportation report is included in our package that was prepared by Kathy Blasey. And we also have one by the Registrar of Voters, and there was also one before Public Works from the Assessor's Office and the Building Department. So just letting you know which ones we have in our packages. And then Eric, what's the last page? So after the registrar of voters, what's the last page in the packet related to?
So, that is a list that I get on a monthly basis for all of the crumbling foundations that are in the town of Andover. And unfortunately, Andover is part of this giant Excel list. And we didn't do a great job when we cut off and put that in, you know, of Xing out, of transferring the header information that should have been on that pack. So basically what it is it's a list in Andover of how many houses have registered for the Crumbling Foundation program, and then the notes, essentially the progress notes on it. And the reason I bring this to your attention is because if something is in that Crumbling Foundation, we are obligated by state law to give them a pretty huge tax abatement until their Crumbling Foundation is dealt with. So this list essentially goes to the assessor's office, and the assessor's office has to reduce, by law, has to reduce taxes pretty considerably on those properties. So that's why I've given it. I've given this to you before. I don't give it to you very often because it doesn't really change much with time.
Can you if I'm counting the ones, which I'm assuming are the number of properties, there's 22 properties in Andover?
Yeah, I thought our list was 31 properties.
Right. If you get us, you can get us that list next time, that would be helpful because another unfunded state mandate, basically. Are they funding us for this? Are they refunding us for the property tax dollars?
No, I don't think we're getting any. The only fortunate thing in Andover is we actually have very few houses that are eligible for the rebate, because it's only the ones that have real significant spalling and cracking and actually get recommended for replacement. And there aren't that many of those in Andover.
Okay.
In a lot of towns, this has made a significant impact on their grand list.
Okay. So
in Andover, it's a relatively minor contribution.
So, since you provided it, I would ask you for next month, can you provide it again, or not even provide this? Can you just give us a list of these are the number of houses that are in Andover that are impacted by the Crumbling Foundation and the concrete issue? And these are the houses, these are the number of houses that we have to give an abatement to, and tell us in round numbers what that total is going to be?
Okay, I can get you that info.
I appreciate it. All right. Item 13, any correspondence?
None that I am aware of.
Okay, item 14, public speak. So Elaine Bucart.
Hello. I just wanted to mention when they were talking about the affordable housing, that when the UConn students came and gave us those 13 different plans, most of them were on town-owned property, and most of them had some affordable housing as part of their plans. They had multifamily and smaller houses and little communities with play areas, things like that. So it's valuable information I think they came up with, and the students themselves were interestingly enough, they thought that this would be very attractive to, graduating UConn students in the area to come and live in Andover. So, just, I heard the discussion and it was like, yeah, they seem to think we have some valuable, you know, something to offer. And they certainly, felt like, the river and, just the area itself and the bike trails and the walking trails and the rail trail, everything was conducive to young people. So I thought that I just wanted to mention that. So we should, take another look at those 13 different plans that they came up with.
Right.
All right, that's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Diane Grenier.
Yes, hello. On the planning discussion there, I thought that was great. Thank you for John, the town planner, coming to give us that information. Very informative. Always disappointed that there's not a lot of residents that zoom into these meetings to hear these discussions. Unfortunate. I know that the planning and zoning is now have their survey going on for the plan of development, and I hope that's going well, and I think that that'll give the, assuming that enough residents actually participate in that survey, should give the planning and zoning and the planner some valuable information about what we as residents want our town to look like. Also a comment on the blight issue. Yay, kudos to whoever's instituting that and making that all happen. It's noticeable. I noticed many homes in town that are blight stricken, have been being cleaned up, and I'm glad to see there's some teeth in it now. The one property there on Route 6 has been an eyesore for quite some time, and I'm glad to see that some teeth have been put into that. And again, the blight ordinance was a good idea, and it seems to be working, and it shows. People see that. A comment about the AHM. Some of the services that they offer, it's not only for youth. Last year, since I had a couple of knees replaced, I had to contact the AHM youth service. They have a program called Chores that match up senior citizens like myself with some teenagers to come do some yard work, free to the seniors. There's a grant that pays the students. They get minimum wage. It was a great thing. They came on time. They were responsible. They came with water and tools and everything they needed. And it was a great experience, and I'll be using them again. And I hope other people use their services as well. It's a great thing. And again, seniors in town, I think, are taking advantage of that. So it's a good thing. So I encourage you to support them. I know you've already voted yes, and that's a good thing. So thank you all. And that's about all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Joanne Ebert.
I just wanted to echo too that I thought the town planner gave a really good presentation. It was great to have you all ask him certain questions and him be able to really explain things, right on point as to steps the town could take, or just to, he went step by step of what the town could do. And it is important. I also think that Andover, I'm kind of in favor just on a personal level with the senior housing type thing, because I sort of agree that'd probably be more of the market for the townspeople, but not to sell everybody too short either, because people do like the small town charm and appeal. And I don't think everyone needs to walk everywhere. I know that seniors or young people, even though they can't maybe afford luxury houses, they definitely will probably have some kind of car, so they'd be able to get around and do things. So I really enjoyed it and learned a lot too. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Did I miss anyone? All right. So Diane, Elaine, and Joanne, thank you very much for attending. Appreciate that. I'm going to make a motion to go into executive session to discuss items 7B, community center construction update, and items 7E, the lot line agreement for the King property.
Second.
Second that? Okay. All those in favor?
Oh, do you have to say who you're inviting in?
Oh, we're inviting in, I'm sorry, thank you, Paula. We're inviting in the town administrator, Eric Anderson, and the town attorney, Dennis O'Brien. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The Board of Selectmen is leaving executive session at 10:32 on 2021. I'm going to make a motion to authorize Eric Anderson, the town administrator, to finalize a boundary line agreement and property conveyance agreement between the town of Andover and the King family, which references the last map presented to the Board of Selectmen at the January 8th, 2024 regular meeting.
I'll second.
All right. Further discussion on this issue? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. Since I made most of the motions today, I'm gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. We'll see you guys.